Hi, everyone. Just letting everyone into the room here. Alrighty, I think everyone's in here. Good afternoon. I'm Felina Cordova Marks. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Arizona's College of Public Health. If you don't know who I am, if you can't tell, I love to knit. So today I'm very excited. Yeah, I love to knit. I knit this, and I'm currently working on one of Jennifer's patterns. It's so pretty. I love it. So I'm beyond excited for her to be our guest today. And I'm going to pass it along to Billy, and go ahead, Billy.
Hello, everyone. My name is William Carson. I also go by Billy. I'm a second-year doctoral student at the College of Public Health here, and also Dr. Cordova Marks' research assistant. I'm excited to be here, and I personally have not knit before, so I'm excited to try this out.
Thank you, Billy. So welcome, Jennifer Berg, the native knitter. Some of you might know her on Instagram. And take it away, Jennifer.
Okay, I'm gonna actually share my screen so that I can do a little small presentation, and then we will get into knitting together. I hope this goes smoothly. Whenever you're doing stuff like this, I feel like something always gives you an issue, but we'll just work with it. So can everyone see my little presentation screen?
Yep.
I believe. Okay. So hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. William, thank you, or Billy. Thank you for setting all of this up. We've been emailing a ton back and forth. I'm happy that we're finally here and we're doing it. So we've have a short amount of time. And so I just kind of wanted to run through a few things, talk a little bit about who I am, what I'm doing, how I got into it, and then we will just start getting into this project. And then we will also just be talking about the benefits of playing with yarn and why it's really good for you. So let me just formally introduce myself. Jennifer Berg Nishia, Wunalachni Nishle, Bilagana Bushish Chin, Touch Ini Dashich A, Beshbich Dashanella. So I come from the people or the one who walks around clan. And then my father is Caucasian, and then my mother's father's clan is Red Running Into the Water clan, and then my father's clan is German. And then in the picture here, you can see my Masane and I, and then a little project that I had worked on. It was one of my first projects that I worked on. So what do I do? I get this asked a lot. Because people think that I'm actually making physical items and selling them, but I'm not. I have figured out a way to not have to make sweaters and sell them. So I make patterns, and then I sell the downloadable pattern for others to make. There's companies like Ravelry and magazines that sell knitting patterns, and that's what I kind of am doing on a daily basis. I'm designing, but then I also I take speaking engagements like this, and I use my platform to give or to speak about Native Americans, because a lot of people that are asking for these kind of presentations, and not this one, but some back east or in Portland area and things like that, people don't even realize that Native Americans even exist, which is really sad. And so just kind of using knitting as an outlet or as a way to also bring in, my Native American heritage and being Navajo and bringing Navajo design into the world. So, and then lastly, I design with companies, and this has been a newer thing in the last couple of years, where if I believe that they're an ethical company, or they're really appreciative of Native design and they're reaching out to me to design with them, then I'll work with them. So I'm working with a few clothing lines right now. And then I'm also, I've had some previous patterns that have been made into blankets that have been mass produced through a company called Seek and Swoon. And I have a little collection with them. And then you can see in the pictures, I have the sweater I'm wearing. These are all of my designs, some cowls, another sweater. these like cuffs that go with like my moccasins. And then you can see the blankets that I'm holding all together. So I don't think I skipped anything. Okay. So, and then I also get asked, like, how did I even get into this? Like, did my grandma teach me to knit, or like, how did I start this? So, honestly, I didn't know that this was like going to be my job. I didn't set out for this to be like my job that I could do at home or anything like that. It started when I was in college, and I used to knit, after class, and I would ride my bike home, and I'd be all sweaty and like go and sit down and just start knitting like hats and things like that. And I learned through YouTube, actually. I just kind of picked it up, and I just like fell in love with it. And I realized it was like a really good activity for me to do, you know, just at home. And it was like completely different from like writing papers. I was using a different side of my brain. And also I was like super broke in college, and I like really wanted to make gifts and presents for my family. And I realized that I could buy like a skein of yarn for like $8 and make like 2 or 3 hats out of it. So it was like a really good way for me to make presents that felt really personalized, and that were like really, like, I really did love making it, and it was made from the heart. So that was like another reason why I started knitting. But like one day, like 5 years into my knitting journey, after college and everything, I made this like Instagram account, and I just said, you know, I'm native and I knit. So I put native knitter, and somehow the name was on there. And I made this account because my family was kind of sick of seeing all my knitting projects on my personal account, and they wanted to see my son, my brand new baby. They'd rather see him. So I just made this account, and it was just kind of like, oh, I like taking pictures of the things that I make because I'm really proud of them. And at the time, I wasn't like making anything that was designed by myself. It was all other people's patterns. So I made this account, and then I soon realized, like looking through like the knitting community, that there was like, it was really lacking in authentic like native design. There was like a lot of patterns that were called like Aztec or Mayan, and they were just kind of like hokey, not really like real attached to anything. And so I decided that I wanted to try my hand at like designing a hat, because I was like, I know, you know, a hat is essentially a tube, and then you decrease the top. And like, I was like, and I had just like, I think I was already 2 or 3 years into doing color work, which is the style of kind of knitting that I do. And I thought, like, it can't be as hard as I think it is to actually write a pattern. But while I was designing this hat, I was just kind of taking photos of it and posting it on my Instagram, like in process. And a company called Making Magazine came across my account, and they were like, hey, we would love to come alongside you. We'd love to publish this pattern with you in our upcoming, you know, magazine. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to be any good. Like, this is my first pattern. I am kind of nervous about, you know, taking a step into publishing it in a magazine. This seems too far fetched for me. And they were like really gracious, and they came alongside me, and they actually like side by side helped me learn how to write patterns properly, gave me the right tools and language, and they helped me like figure out the layout of like all of my patterns. And like, they really did set me up to be able to have some success with writing patterns. And then they taught me like the process of, you know, this is what it's going to look like finished, but you need to get a tech editor, and you need to do all these things to be able to make sure that it's going to like be something that other people can copy. So that was really cool. And then it just kind of took off from there, honestly. Like, I feel like knitting just kind of dropped into my lap, because I didn't really, at the time, I had, you know, I'd previously graduated from UNM, and I went to school for community and regional planning. And I think the community aspect of it was something that drew me to the knitting community, because there's just it's just a really great community. There's a lot of support there. And so I felt like that was like something that I took in from what I had got my degree in. And then my family is a business family. We have a store on the reservation, and I grew up in a family business. So, you know, I always kind of thought like, maybe I'll just do something on my own, or, you know, and so this was like perfect for my life. And at the time I had a 1-year-old, and it was just kind of like, I could stay home and do this. So it's been really great. And I'm like super grateful for it. And so like, I just really want to encourage any of you, like this quote, like the things you are passionate about are not random, they're your calling. Like the things that you like really feel deep down inside that you're just like super pumped on life about, go after those things, because they might feel like this like random thing. And like, it's hard to explain to people when you like go to a Christmas party, like what you do, but it's also just like, if you're passionate about it, it doesn't matter. Like you can just keep moving forward, and like, you could get, knocked down a few times, but if you're passionate about it, you'll be able to get back up and keep going after it. So, let's move on. So let's look at like the benefits of knitting. I don't think that there's a lot of physical benefits to knitting, if I'm being honest, but there's a lot of mental benefits because your physical health may kind of suffer, honestly, if you just keep knitting. Like my hands feel like 90-year-old lady hands, like they're so beat up, but the mental aspect is really important to me. And I've just seen so many benefits from knitting. So some of them that I've been like looking up and researching, and then also experience for myself. There's been, it's shown that it lowers blood pressure. It reduces depression and anxiety. It slowed the onset of dementia. And I think that's that repetitive motion. And then it can be used as a distraction from chronic pain, which I thought was really interesting. And then it increased sense of well-being, and it reduced loneliness and isolation. And to just speak about like the anxiety part of it, like I feel like for myself, whenever I start feeling anxious, like even like preparing to talk about knitting, I was sitting here knitting, and it like really helped me just be like, let me just hone in on this, and everything else will just kind of be what it is. And I think the actual practice of knitting and that repetitive motion, and then like you're in your kind of enclosed space when you're knitting, that also like kind of creates like a boundary for you to just kind of be in your own space. And so I've seen a lot of benefits for anxiety purposes. And then one of the other things I've really seen and experienced was the social connection. Like I said, the knitting community is really awesome. They're really supportive. I've seen like people who like, I had a friend who was a designer, and she like somehow fell and like knocked her teeth out. And she was like, I don't have insurance. We're like in transition and all this stuff. And she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to like do a pattern sale. And like people came together, and she got to have like her surgery done for her teeth, and people were just really supportive and like connected through the knitting community. I thought that was just really cool. But then also like while you're knitting, it gives you a chance to like give back. There's a lot of opportunities, especially if you get into a knitting group, and there's knitting groups all over the country. You could just like type it into your Facebook, and you would find one in Tucson or in Albuquerque, wherever you are. But a lot of the knitting groups, they tend to do something for charity. Like I know they do a lot of stuff for like preemie hats and things like that. And that like is super beneficial to like, it gives you kind of like a boost whenever, you're able to gift something, and especially something that's like heartfelt and like you made it. And I think that that's just a really cool kind of connection with mental health. And then the chronic pain one is like really interesting because one study kind of talked about like how it gives you like both physical relief, and then like you have like social support through it, and it like can help kind of distract you from your chronic pain, and it gives you something to do. And I'm like, a part of me, I'm like, I wish that knitting could be like used in so many different aspects. I'm just like, it would be so good for people if they knew like how beneficial it would be for their lives to knit. But yeah, so there you go. Knitting is like really, really good for you. So you should buy some yarn and try to make stuff that you can like even knit with your arms. If you don't have needles, you can, you can start crocheting. There's all different ways, but I think you get the same type of benefits from it. So let's knit. Okay, we don't have much time, so I'm going to try to get this going. We're making a mug rug, and I'm going to like share my hands as well as my face. If you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat. And then you guys interrupt me if I'm not seeing it. And then, yeah, let's just get going on this. Let me stop sharing and share. Okay, is everyone able to see my hands down here? Okay, so this is what we're gonna make. It's like a little mug rug, and it has little tassels on it. And this is a stitch that's called garter stitch. And what we're gonna be doing today is just knitting. We're not going to be doing purling or anything else. We're just doing knitting. And this is the way that it starts looking when you start turning your knitting back and forth. We're not knitting in the round, we're just knitting flat. So let's get started. So you're gonna have your yarn, and I asked for like worsted weight yarn. It's like kind of heavier weight yarn. This is, I think this might be a little thinner worsted, but this is what I've got right now. So you're also going to use your needles. You could use, I asked for like size 8. You could use 9s or 7s. We're not really working for a specific gauge. We're just kind of making a small rectangle. So you can kind of stop when you want to stop, or, you know, knit for as long as you want, and then you can bind it off. And just, this could just be for practice, or it could be to actually make the mug rug. So with your yarn, you're gonna start taking out about like, let's say a yard. Okay, and I'm gonna teach you the long tail cast on. If you're having issues with it, you should write that down, because there's lots of videos online for long tail cast on. And we are casting on, let me just make sure, I think I said 24 stitches on our needles. So let's get this going. Let me just make sure my hands are right where they need to be. So you're gonna have the tail on one side over here, and then your working yarn on your right side. You're gonna go like in the middle of the yarn that you just pulled out, so like half a yard. And then you're gonna make like a C with your left hand. You're gonna place the yarn with the working yarn, which is the yarn that's coming off of the ball, up on top, and then the tail of that yarn below. Okay, and you're gonna kind of stick your fingers up like this, because these 3 fingers are going to grab this and this together like this. So you kind of create this opening here. Okay, let me just turn my hand again like this. It's like a little C. And then you're kind of just going to keep it taut like this, and then grab it with your fingers. Okay. How's everyone doing? Let me see. Let me look at this chat. My dog's growling. I think you can hear him. The mailman is here. Let me look and make sure everyone's okay. Okay. If you're struggling, whatever, just put it in the comments. I have my comments up if you want me to repeat something, okay? Okay, so from here, we're gonna get our needle like this, and we're gonna insert it into this space right here. You're gonna put your finger on top of it like this, and then you're going to pull this back like so. And we're casting on, so we're trying to get this yarn wrapped around this needle so that it'll stay on. So now the tip of the needle is gonna go under this first piece of yarn coming out from the thumb. You're gonna go under, and then you're gonna go, what would be clockwise around your index finger. And there's a little like gap in between your thumb right here. You can go down into this space. And then this is the hard part for everyone, okay? You're going to let go of the yarn and kind of cinch it up to the top like that. And you should have 2 on your needle. I will do it again. Everyone's faces are like kind of like stressed out. This is supposed to be calming, remember? So
thank you, because I personally was very confused. I'm trying to figure out how to put it in my hand right now.
Okay, let's do the hand motion again. Okay, so I'm gonna take it off. So with your left hand, you're gonna just run it like this on your hand. And then these 3 fingers, your middle ring finger and pinky, they're gonna grab both strands like that. So then it kind of keeps it like taut between your index and your thumb. And then you're going to get your needle in your right hand. You're going to stick it through the little opening you've created right there. Put your finger on the yarn so that you can like keep it taut and so it won't slip off. Pull it back. And then this is helpful. Your hand, instead of just leaving it like this open, tilt your wrist down like and have your palm up so that you can kind of see where I'm going to put the needle in. And then you're going to go into this, you're going to go down and up through this first strand that's on your thumb. And then you're going to carry that over. And there's this yarn right here on your index finger. You're going to go clockwise around it. And then you're going to drop down into this space right here on your thumb. There's a space on your thumb, drop down into it. And then I usually just drop my thumb, the yarn off of my thumb first, and then kind of pull it taut. And that'll give you 2 on your knitting needle. Okay. And then this is casting on. So this is, you've casted on 2. And with the long tail method, this is the only time you're going to cast on 2 at one time. So after this, you're going to stick your yarn or your hand into the space that has the 2 strands coming off the needle. And you're going to do that same thing, like kind of like the C, you're going to kind of lay it across, grab the yarn with the 3 fingers again to keep it taut, pull it back. But you can keep your finger here, but it shouldn't slip off at this point. And then you're going to do that same motion and you're going to do it until you have 24 stitches on your needle. I can teach you another way to cast on, and it's a lot simpler. It's a lot of loops, but the first couple rounds are going to be kind of tight or really loose. So this is an easier method to keep it stretchy. So you're going to go up through the thumb, around that index, and then back down into that thumb space. So I'll do it again. Up through the thumb, around the index, and then drop down into that thumb space. And I'm just dropping the yarn with my thumb and then pulling it taut. So then another method, I'm going to take this off and then I'll do it again later. But if you're struggling, if you're having just like a hard time getting that to work, you can also just tie a knot. And let me just tie a knot really quick. And you can stick it on your needle. Wow, tying a knot when people are watching is hilarious. Okay, I feel like my fingers don't work. Okay, and then you can just kind of use your thumb. If you can get this knot kind of tight and close to the needle, that's better, but I'm going to do it loose. You can get your thumb and your index finger, and I grab the yarn. Let me move this. I grab the yarn and I just kind of make a loop like this, stick it on my needle. I grab it again, make a loop, stick it on my needle and tighten it up. So that might be helpful for some of you who are struggling with the long tail cast on, but that's also going to get you stitches on there, and we'll need 24 stitches on there. So I'm going to do the long tail cast on again. And I'm gonna just kind of do it a little faster so that I can get it going on my cast on. So I grab the yarn like that, put my index finger on it, pull it back, and then go up through the thumb, around the index, and then down through the thumb and let go of it. So I'll just kind of show you, once you start getting the motion, it kind of becomes like, I can just do this really super fast. There's a lot of different techniques for casting on, but this is one of the techniques that's going to create a somewhat stretchy border instead of a really, really tight border. So, and I'm going to only do this many because I actually have halfway through the project sample already made. So let's do, I don't know how many stitches this is. Doesn't matter. I'll make a mini one. Okay. So how many of you are like successfully getting a cast on going? Let's look. I'm going to pull this up. I have thumbs up from some people. If you're like struggling, put a thumbs down. Okay. I see you guys. Kyra. Got it. Awesome. Okay. And if it's like, if you're struggling, like I said, doing the loop one's going to be a lot easier, but also there's so many videos online about long tail cast on. So like, if you forget how to do this, it's not like coming back to you, just go look it up on like Pearl Soho has really good ones, like really clean videos. And so does Brooklyn Tweed. Those are the ones that I really like recommend to people because they're really easy to follow. Okay. So now that we're got a little bit of cast on, well, let me see. How many people have 24 stitches on? That's the other thing. Is anyone struggling with like just getting, everyone has few stitches on? Because I'm going to start teaching how to actually knit, the process of knitting. And I'll teach you 2 different ways to actually knit. So there's one way that's called traditional knitting. And that's the way I'll show you. And that's usually the way you like see in movies, like when grandmas are like knitting, that's what you see. But then there's also a style, it's called continental knitting. And that's when you use your left hand to carry the yarn. And then you essentially pick the yarn instead of throwing the yarn, which is traditional knitting. So we're going to learn how to throw the yarn first, and then we will get into the continental later, because that's a more advanced kind of thing. But if for some reason traditional knitting's not working for you, then we can try the continental. Sometimes people pick it up differently, or maybe they learned some other way from, a grandparent a long time ago, and that's the way they learned. So let's do traditional knitting. So here we go, where we want to knit with the working yarn. So you may have like a long tail, and you can put that off to the side, or you can wrap it up just so it's out of the way and you're not actually using it to knit. So you're going to have your ball of yarn to your right. And then we are going to get going on knitting. So this is the first stitch, and here you can see all the stitches. I pointed this down. So instead of having all of these like twisted up or anything, I just even them out and push them down. So we're going to be knitting from here up like that. So this is the first stitch, and you're now using another needle, and you're sticking your the ones that you just casted on into your left hand. So now we're going to use this right needle. You're going to go up through this stitch, this first stitch, and you're going to cross it in the back. And so I'm through the stitch and I'm making a cross in the back. And this might be really awkward for people to hold at first. And so you might want to like kind of put it on your lap, at least one of the needles. Sometimes people like stick it in their like stomach and then they like work more with their right hand. But if you can balance it, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to have an X like this. You're going to then with your right hand, you're going to wrap the yarn around the back needle and kind of pull it through, kind of like you're flossing, like you want to like pull it through the groove between these 2 needles. And then with the right needle, and it's kind of helpful if you hold this yarn down, but not essential. You're going to pull this needle kind of back, and you're going to scoop the yarn that you just wrapped. And you see how that's me scooping that yarn that I just wrapped. And then you're going to pull this stitch up and off of the left needle. And then you're going to have it on your right needle now. And you can kind of pull that tight. So let me show you again, and I'll do it in slow motion. So as slow as I can do it in slow motion. Here we go. So you're going to go up through the stitch. You're going to make an X in the back like that. You're going to grab your working yarn on the right, wrap it around the back needle and through the 2 needles. And now this is the yarn that you're scooping with the right needle. You're scooping it like this, and then you're going to pull it up and off of that left needle onto your right. You can kind of readjust it. And then that's the whole motion. Like you're going to just do this 1,000 times, like 1,000,000 times. And then that repetition is going to start really picking up. So you'll stick it into this next stitch, up through the stitch, cross it in the back with the working yarn. You're going to wrap the right needle and then scoop that yarn through this stitch and then up and off of that needle. So let me check in. Let me see how everyone's doing. I can't really see anyone's faces, but you can give me a thumbs up if you're doing okay, if it's making sense. Message me if it's not. I know this can be like pretty hard to like get your hands to like feel coordinated when you're first starting knitting. But okay, so I'm not really seeing much interaction, which is fine. But I'm just going to keep knitting a few more like this. Does anyone want me to kind of go back to the very beginning and do the cast on? Would that be helpful for anyone? I'm not seeing.
So that would be helpful for me, but please don't start over just because I'm having trouble because.
Well, I have a few pairs of needles. So let me just show a few more just of me knitting, and then I can go back and do the long tail cast on again.
Okay.
So we're going to make an X in the back. You go up through this stitch right here, make an X in the back, and it kind of holds itself because you're putting both needles through one stitch. And then you're going to wrap that yarn like this with the working yarn with your right hand. And you're going to like kind of floss in between those two needles. And then you're going to pull your needle kind of like down and then scoop that yarn that you just wrapped through this and then up and off, and then that'll create another row. So once we get to the end here, I'll just knit a few more like this. And it's helpful if you have wooden needles, it's helpful to move your yarn upwards like this, but you don't want to lose any of them. So kind of space them out. You can always like readjust as you go, but you don't want to lose any of your stitches that you already have cast on. So let me just do a few more. Okay. And then once I get to the end, I want to show you like what it looks like at the very end. Should have done like half the amount of these stitches because I don't usually knit traditional, I knit continental. So this is a lot slower going for me. And knitting is slow. It's slow fashion. So it's supposed to be like this. You're supposed to take your time. Okay, almost there. 3 more. And then I'm going to turn my work. With this project, there's not really like a right side or a wrong side because both sides are going to be in garter stitch. And so I'll get that last stitch off of there. And in the pattern, it says I slipped the first stitch to create a nice border. And so what that means is I'm just creating this like little kind of like jagged border, but it's going along with the pattern. So when I say slip the first stitch, all that means is instead of knitting that stitch, you're just going to slip it off like this and just put it on onto the right needle. And then you're going to start knitting. So the first stitch of each round you can slip, and that'll create a better edge to your work. So then you'll just keep going like this back and forth. So again, you just start knitting again. And that's going to create this stitch called garter stitch. So you'll turn your work, you'll put it into your left hand, and then you'll start knitting again with your blank needle, putting all of those needles or all those stitches onto your right needle Once they're all on your right needle, put it in your left hand and then repeat it. So I have kind of a already in process mug rug here. And so before I leave you guys, because we're already kind of running out of time, I kind of wanted to talk about, since we did the cast on, I wanted to kind of talk about how to bind off. So when you're done with your project, you can actually like get it off your needles, because you're like, okay, I did this many rows. How do I now remove it? So you'll get your needle. And just like you are going into knit, and you can slip this first stitch, like I said before, you're going to knit, you're going to have 2 on your right needle to be able to bind off. So once you have 2 on this needle, you're going to take the first one that you did, you're going to pull that over, and you can use this other needle, or you can even use your finger. Sometimes it's easier to just like grab it with your hand. And you're going to pull that one over this stitch, but not drop this stitch. You're going to drop this one off, the first one off. So you're going to drop it off like that. So now you have 1 on here. So you always need 2 on here. So you got to knit another one to get it on to the right needle. So now you have 2 again. You're going to take that first one and you're going to pull it over that stitch, not letting that first one or the second one off. And you'll drop it into the space in between the needles, and that'll create a bind off. So let me go back to the very beginning and do another version of the cast on. And I can just pull this out. Okay, how's everyone doing before? Everyone looks good on here. Okay. All right, let me just do another another kind of tutorial on the cast on, and let me go slow, because it is, the cast on is like the most important part, right? Because it's how you start knitting. But it can be kind of confusing trying to get your hands to work the right way. So you'll have your working yarn up here, and then you'll have your tail coming down in front of you. So kind of just like put it straight in front of you. You're going to make a C with your hand, lay the yarn on your hands like this. And then you're going to put these 2 strands together, and these 3 fingers are going to grab it. Now you're going to grab your needle. You're going to place the needle in between the stitch, between or underneath the yarn. Put your index finger on the yarn, pull it back, and then you're going to go under the thumb, clockwise around the index, and then drop down into that thumb space, and you can release the thumb and pull it taut so that you have 2 stitches. And then now you have your working yarn up here still, your tail here, and you're going to put your fingers through that space again and grabbing with your 3 fingers the tail and the working yarn underneath. Tilt your hand upwards, your palm upwards, pull it back, and now you're ready to go through the thumb, clockwise around the index, and then drop down through into that space, dropping the yarn on your thumb and pulling it tight. Now you have 3, and you'll just keep doing that motion. And you don't even have to let go of the yarn on your left hand after a while. If you have to reset every now and then just to kind of get your grip again, then you can just kind of go in with a C. These 3 fingers grab at the yarn, pull it back, thumb, index, down through the thumb, up through the thumb, clockwise around the index, drop down through the thumb. And then the motion, just your left hand starts moving more naturally once you just do it over and over again. So does anyone have any questions for me? You guys are kind of quiet on here. I feel like I'm like, they're still there, right? My internet's working, right? And no one's like, I can't hear you anymore.
Is everyone doing okay? If not, you started showing the bind off. Can you show people how to end the bind off? Like
Yeah,
how you cut off your yarn and where you put it through?
yeah,
That might not be super intuitive.
okay. So I'm still, ooh, I'm starting to continental knit, still in process to bind off. So again, you want 2 stitches on your right needle. And then you're going to, with this stitch on your needle, right on the, it's going to be like the first stitch, and that's will be the second stitch. The first stitch is going to cross over the second stitch, over and off. So you'll do this all the way to the end. I'm going to knit with my left hand because it's what I usually knit with. And then we're gonna, I don't think we have time, but the tassels on the edges of the mug rug are, I just used my needle to be able to like get the pieces of yarn through, but if you have a crochet hook, that's gonna like help you out so much instead of just trying to like get it through a small space. But the crochet hook will be able to grab the yarn and then pull it halfway through, and then you'll be able to like tie it off. But I also have a link in the pattern to how I did that, and that'll like really help you out once you get to that point. So almost to the end of binding it off. And then you will, if you have a tapestry needle or a needle, like a sewing needle that your yarn will be able to fit through the loop, that's how we're going to finish it off. Or you can use a crochet hook also, but it'll be easier if you have a tapestry needle. Also, if you don't have a tapestry needle, because there's tassels on each corner of this, you could also just leave it. So here I'm at the last one. I'm knitting this stitch like normal, and I'm taking this one up and off. Okay. So now it's going to look like this. I have a little rectangle, and I have this tassel or this beginning. That's the tail that I started with. And then I'm going to have kind of another end over here, but I have to get this last loop off. So you can go in and go ahead and cut your yarn. I usually leave around like 5 inches, 4 inches. And you can cut your yarn. So I'll just cut it here. And then with this loop, you're going to just keep making it a bigger and bigger loop and pulling it up. And it's just going to create a knot. And you're going to let that tail run through the hole, and it'll create a knot on its own. And because there's going to be tassels on all these ends, you could, instead of weaving these ends in, you could just leave them as well, so that you're not having to worry too much about weaving everything in and making sure it's all uniform. Adding the tassels will give you the same effect, and then you'll just cut it the same length as your tassel. So I would just cut this, you know, an inch from the edge, and they're both essentially just knots right there, and so they're not going to come undone. So that's basically the little project that I have for you, and I hope that everyone learned something from this. I know that it was really fast. Usually when I'm doing like in-person knitting classes, they're like 2-3 hours long, so I can go and be with each person to make sure they're getting it. And but I hope that it wasn't too fast and that you were able to learn something from it. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate, you know, having some time to knit with all of you.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Jennifer?